Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into something pretty major in the music business. The recent sale of a huge chunk of the Notorious B.I.G.'s music catalog.
That's right. Big news.
Yeah. And to really unpack this, we've looked at articles from places like The Hollywood Reporter, Music Business Worldwide, plus got some perspectives from YouTube channels, Jay Nolan, Real Rhythm and Rhymes, Attorney Jeff, Cool University, a real mix.
A good range of sources there.
Definitely. So our aim here is to figure out, what exactly happened with this deal, who the key players are, and maybe what this all means for Biggie's legacy going forward.
And the timing itself is, it's notable. This deal with Primary Wave closed not long after Biggie's mother, Valletta Wallace, sadly passed away.
Oh, wow. When was that?
That was February 2025. So yeah, that closeness in time, it definitely adds another dimension to the whole story.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's dive in. The big news is Primary Wave finalized an agreement. What exactly did they get their hands on?
Okay, so they acquired a 50% stake in the Notorious B.I.G.'s estate. And that's, it's pretty comprehensive.
Like, what does that include specifically?
It covers his recordings, the master rights, and his publishing, which is the songwriting side of things.
Right.
But also, crucially, his name, image, and likeness rights. So how his actual persona can be used.
Okay, wow. So basically half of everything associated with Biggie as an artist.
Pretty much, yeah. And the deal values the entire estate at reportedly over $200 million.
$200 million.
Yeah.
That's a huge valuation. Did our sources give any more, specific breakdowns on the money side?
They did offer some insight, yeah. Primary Wave hasn't, publicly announced the exact figure they paid.
Standard practice, I guess.
Right. But reports are suggesting the publishing rights alone were valued somewhere around $100 million.
Okay.
And the master rights maybe between, say, $30 and $50 million. So the actual price Primary Wave paid for their 50% is likely somewhere in the 8-figure range.
Got it. So let's talk about Primary Wave. Who are they? What's their background?
Sure. So Primary Wave Music, they're an independent music publisher and talent management company. Been around since 2006, founded by Larry Mestel.
And their whole thing is?
Their main focus really is partnering with artists who have these established legacies, they often call them heritage artists, and acquiring stakes in their music catalogs.
I've seen their name pop up before. They have some pretty big names already, don't they? The sources mentioned a few.
Oh, definitely. Their roster is quite impressive. We're talking Bob Marley, Whitney Houston, Stevie Nicks, Luther Vandross. I mean, legends.
Wow.
And more recently, they've done deals with people like Jimmy Webb, Jerry Jeff Walker, even classical artists like Itzhak Perlman, Chuck Mangione, rock guys like Nuno Bettencourt from Extreme, the Spin Doctors, Neil Finn from Crowded House, even the Village People, P.F. Sloan, Neil Sedaka. It's a really diverse group.
That's quite a collection. And doing these kinds of big deals, acquiring catalogs like Biggie's, that takes serious financial backing, I imagine.
You'd imagine, right? Yeah, absolutely. Back in 2022, they announced this massive partnership with Brookfield Asset Management.
How massive?
We're talking $2 billion. So that kind of financial firepower is definitely what enables them to make these major acquisitions.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift focus a bit to the estate side of things, and specifically Valletta Wallace. It sounds like she was just incredibly instrumental after Biggie passed.
Oh, completely. Since his death in 1997, she really dedicated her life to managing and, frankly, protecting her son's legacy. The reports suggest she grew the estate's value from maybe around $10 million initially to well over $160 million. That's quite something.
That's incredible stewardship. And it wasn't just the money, right? She was involved in the creative side, too.
Yeah, very much so. She was a producer on the biopic Notorious back in 2009.
Right, I remember that.
And she was always overseeing the licensing, the merchandise, making sure any posthumous projects were handled respectfully, really kept his presence alive.
And crucially, for this deal, it sounds like she was okay with it.
That seems to be the case. Multiple sources report that Valletta Wallace actually approved this agreement with Primary Wave shortly before she passed away.
So maybe this was part of her plan for the long-term future of the estate.
It certainly suggests that, yeah, a degree of foresight and planning.
Who's actually handling the estate side of this deal now?
The estate is represented by Mark Pitts and Wayne Barrow. They're from Bystorm Entertainment.
Mark Pitts. Does that name ring a bell? I feel like I've heard it in connection with Biggie before.
Yeah, there's an interesting link. Pitts actually started out as an intern for Puff Daddy back at Bad Boy Records during Biggie's time there.
Oh, wow. Full circle.
Kind of, yeah. And he later went on to discover J. Cole, so he's obviously got a good ear and industry experience.
Okay. So Primary Wave has this 50% stake now. What do they actually plan to do with it? What are their intentions for Biggie's legacy? This is where it gets interesting, right?
It really does. Their public statements say they want to work with the estate to, and I quote, enhance Biggie Small's status as a legend.
Okay. What does that mean in practice? Any specific ideas mentioned?
Well, yeah, some potential projects have been floated. Things like developing a Broadway show based on his life and music.
A Broadway show?
Also creating immersive experiences using his music, maybe leveraging technology in new ways, and even the possibility of a virtual avatar.
A virtual avatar. Okay,
Yeah.
That definitely opens up a whole conversation. Some of our YouTube sources touched on that, didn't they? The sort of sensitivities around this stuff.
They did. Real Rhythm and Rhymes, for example, brought up some valid points about, the risk of being culturally insensitive when you're dealing with an artist's legacy after they're gone. It's that fine line between celebration and maybe commodification. They pointed to the Bob Marley movie as a recent example where some fans felt the portrayal maybe missed the mark,
Yeah, that's always a tricky balance. And Jay Nolan specifically mentioned concerns around AI and using an artist's likeness, right?
Exactly. That's a huge topic across the industry right now. Using someone's voice, their image, through AI or in VR after they've passed, it raises all sorts of ethical questions.
Questions about control, authenticity.
Right. Who decides what's appropriate? How do you maintain artistic integrity? It's complex territory.
Definitely. And it's worth just taking a moment to remember why this is such a big deal, why Biggie's legacy is so valuable. I mean, his impact on rap is just undeniable.
Oh, absolutely enormous. He's consistently ranked as one of the greatest, most influential rappers ever, full stop.
His debut, Ready to Die in 94,
A masterpiece.
and then Life After Death, coming out right after he died in 97. Landmark albums.
Totally. And the hits. Juicy, Big Papa, Hypnotize, Money Mo Problems. They're not just songs, they're cultural touchstones, still relevant, still played everywhere.
His storytelling, his flow, just phenomenal.
And beyond those two iconic albums, his presence has continued, hasn't it? There were the posthumous albums like Born Again, Duets, The Final Chapter, the Notorious movie we mentioned, loads of documentaries, Biggie and Tupac, Biggie. I got a story to tell on Netflix, bigger than life.
Right.
Plus, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction in 2020, that Warner Music video game deal recently, the visual podcast about life after death. It shows the legacy is constantly being engaged with.
There's clearly an enduring appeal and interest. Now, thinking back to the start of his career, Bad Boy Records, they initially had a piece of the pie too, didn't they?
They did, yes. Like a lot of artists starting out, Biggie had a pretty standard deal back then, which included Bad Boy having a 50% interest in his publishing.
Okay, so half the songwriting royalties went to the label initially.
Correct. But interestingly, his estate managed to negotiate and buy that 50% stake back from Bad Boy and Sean Combs in 2020.
Oh, okay, so the estate owned 100% of the publishing before this Primary Wave deal.
That's right. Getting that full control back likely made this current transaction with Primary Wave much more straightforward.
Right, cleaner deal. Okay, so let's sort of recap where we are. Primary Wave, this big player in catalog acquisition, has bought a 50% stake in the Notorious B.I.G.'s estate.
Yep. Recordings, publishing, name and likeness.
Valuing the whole thing at over $200 million. It seems the deal had Valletta Wallace's blessing before her passing.
Reportedly, yes.
And Bystorm Entertainment is representing the estate. And now Primary Wave plans to, well, enhance the legacy, possibly through things like Broadway shows, maybe even digital avatars.
That sums up the main points nicely. It really underscores the massive value these iconic catalogs hold now and this ongoing trend of acquisition.
It really does. And that, I think, leads us to a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. As we see more and more of these huge catalog deals, especially for artists who aren't with us anymore, what does it actually mean to keep a legacy alive? When corporations acquire these rights, what are the trade-offs? What's the balance between preservation, expansion, and maybe exploitation?
Yeah, what does enhancing a legend truly entail in this new landscape?
Yes, exactly. It's definitely something worth thinking about as this whole catalog market continues to evolve. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.